Alright, in this video we're going to talk about the truth, if you want to say so, about marketing agencies in the martial arts space. Now, I know it's kind of weird to hear me talk about this because, funny enough, I run an agency that helps martial arts schools get more students. But I still think a lot of martial arts school owners don't understand the fundamental truth of it. Because I really think there is only one way for an agency to make marketing worth it for a martial arts school. And to get straight up into it, the way that is basically to test and iterate. Now, sounds kind of obvious, but let me explain. So, the reason, by the way, why I'm making this video, and this ties back into what I was just about to say, I recently saw an ad where someone was like, "Oh yeah, so I would rather send you 10 qualified leads into your school than like 100 unqualified ones, right?" And then he also said something along the lines, "We make it as hard as possible for leads to come into your gym by adding friction to your funnel." And I was like, yeah, that's true. Nothing bad with that. And I agree with it to a certain extent though, because I think we need to basically put some context towards it. And this is why I'm making this video. Now, I think the problem with this statement is also that when you're starting to work with someone, and by the way, this also applies if you just do your own marketing, right? But assuming you hire an agency who does your marketing for you, right? Because, well, probably they're better at marketing than you. If not, then just do it yourself, obviously, right? But the way this works is really simple and straightforward. I truly believe that in the beginning, when you start to work with someone, for example, when we sign on a client, I tell everyone we don't add any friction in the beginning. We will add friction later down the line, but the only way to do this is to get data and then iterate. Meaning, in the beginning, we want to get as much flow through as possible into the system. Meaning, we want to get as many leads, want to get as many bookings, want to get as many people showing up in the gym. Ultimately, obviously, also as many students as we can. But to a certain extent, we will then find that some part of the system is broken. And then based on what's broken, we'll add friction to the funnel. Let me explain. So if we look at this, right? If we look at, okay, we're running ads, say on Facebook and Instagram, right? But I think the same applies if you're running ads on like Facebook, not Facebook, on Google, TikTok, or any other platform, right? But say we take Facebook and Instagram ads here as an example. Now, basically what we need to do at a first principle, someone is staring at their phone, they're seeing your ad, we need to get that person into your gym to sign up for a membership and ultimately to stay at your gym, ideally for the next couple of years, right? So basically we need to get them from point A, them seeing your ad, to you can almost say point B, but it's probably more so like point Z, like the last point where they're like a long-term student at your gym, right? And we need to bridge this gap to get them from seeing the ad to being a long-term student at the gym. Now, how do we bridge this gap? Obviously, that's where you then put like all of the technical stuff into place, which we're not get into in this video, but like funnels, what does the ad look like? Do you use a lead form or like a direct landing page? What does the nurture sequence look like? What's your sales process at the gym, right? But basically, if we break this down, it's just first step to get them into a long-term student. The first step would be for them to enter their contact information on your ad, whether it's on a landing page, you use lead forms or whatever. Second thing would then be, once they enter their contact information, they're booking a trial class, which could be a free one. It could also be a consultation that they're booking. It could be that they're like signing up for like a 6-week program, but they need to, like, basically after they've become a lead, they need to sign up for something, right? So they enter their contact information, they sign up for something, free trial class, paid trial class, whatever. Once that's done, we need to get them to show up to the gym. Let's just assume we're doing the free trial class thing, right? We need to get them basically to become a lead, sign up for a free trial class, show up to the gym for that free trial class, and then after that free trial class, they need to sign up for a membership. So realistically, we have them becoming a lead, them booking a trial class, them showing up to the trial class, and then them being sold on the membership, right? Like those are the 4 steps we really have in this system. If we break it down to like a first principle here, obviously there are like more smaller nuances to it, which is, for example, how does someone become a lead, or like what's the exact process after someone becomes a lead to them booking a class, or what's the exact sales process you use, what's the exact nurture process, yada yada yada. But at a first principle, we have them becoming a lead, them booking a trial class, them showing up to that trial class, and then being sold on a membership. There would be another step with them saying, like, as a long-term student, but we're not going to get into that in this video. So considering we have these 4 steps, and coming back to that statement of we want to only get qualified leads in the gym and we want to add as much friction as possible. Yes, we want to do that, but we first of all don't want to do that at all. Because in the beginning, and again, this is what I tell every client, what we're basically doing is we let everyone become a lead, meaning we don't add many qualification questions to the ads. Most of the time we actually add no qualification questions to the ads, right? So we just run Facebook lead form ads, and we let everyone become a lead. We make it as simple and straightforward for them to book a trial class, and then we make it as simple and straightforward for them to show up to the gym and sign up for a membership, right? But what we're doing is we're tracking all of that, meaning we're tracking how many leads are we getting, what's the booking rate, meaning how many leads are actually booking a trial class, what's the show up rate, meaning how many leads that book a trial class actually show up to the gym, what's the sales conversion rate, meaning how many people that show up to the gym actually sign up for a membership, right? And then based on all of these criteria, we're adding friction. Because what most people don't understand is it's not like there's one thing wrong with your system or like with your marketing, and it's like you're working with an agency and you're like, oh, it just doesn't work with this agency. It's kind of like you saying when your car is broken down, oh, my car just doesn't work, I'm just gonna buy a new car now. That's basically the same as if you always hop between like working with different agencies, right? It's kind of stupid because usually, and if the agency is smart and they're like tracking stuff, they should be able to tell you of like, okay, look, so last month we've generated say 150 leads and our cost per lead was $8, so that's good. Boom. Obviously, we can now also talk about like qualified leads and so forth, but we're gonna keep it a bit simpler here. So we generated last month 150 leads. Out of those 150 leads, 80 people booked a trial class, meaning we have like a bit more than a 50% conversion rate from lead to booking, which is good. And then out of those 80 people that booked the class, not taking, by the way, like cancellation rate into consideration, right? Because if we're being honest, cancellation rate and show up rate is something separate. But let's just say out of those 80 people, 10 showed up to the gym, and then out of those 10 that showed up to the gym, I don't know, let's assume 6 of them signed up for a membership. What you'll find, and if you listen to these numbers again, 150 leads, 80 people sign up for a trial class, 10 people show up to the gym, and 6 people sign up for a membership. What you really realize is, wait, so we had 80 people that booked the class, but only 10 showed up. And you're like, well, something is off there. No, and this is also assuming all of these people already had their trial class. And it's not like 50 people have a trial class scheduled in like 2 weeks from now or in a week from now, whatever, right? Assuming all of these people already had their trial class scheduled. Well, that leads us to the conclusion that the problem is the show-up rate. And the show-up rate is kind of fucked in this scenario, right? So, and you'll probably go to the agency and you'll be like, okay, so we had so many leads, but we only signed up 6 students. Like, what's going on? And then if the agency is smart, they'll show you the numbers and they'll be like, look, our show-up rate is broken, right? And once you have conclusive evidence for this, which we now have, because out of 80 people, only 10 showed up to the gym, like that's a really bad show-up rate. I can tell you that much for free. What you can then basically do is, or what we would then do, by the way, is you would just make it harder for someone to book a trial class. Because if we get back to this, we wouldn't just make it harder for someone to book a class. We would also obviously work on like the process that happens once someone books a class. But the first thing we would do is just, for example, say on the landing page, we would add extra buttons of like, hey, please only book a class if you can actually make it to your scheduled appointment, right? And we would just add like such a simple button to the landing page, for example. Next thing we could do is we could look at the thank you page that we're using, maybe add like a video on there of the school, right? Then we need to look into, okay, how many of these leads, once they book the class, when we're calling them to confirm their appointment with them, or when we're calling them in the morning of the class to confirm they're actually going to come, later that day, how many actually pick up, how many say on the phone that they're coming, right? What do these numbers look like? Because the way we do this is for our clients, we always call everyone that books a trial class. Say someone has a class booked later at 5 p.m. that day, we call them in the morning and double dial them and ask them, hey, can you make it to your trial class later today for your child? Or we also send them like a text message being like, hey, just confirming you're coming later today, please reply with like a thumb up to confirm that you're gonna be there, right? That's what we initially always use for all clients in the beginning. But if we realize the show up rate is bad, what we might do, we might be, hey, so just confirming you're gonna make it later today, we have like a free t-shirt reserved for your child. What name, or like what's the size your child has, so that we can like get the t-shirt sorted right away or something like that, right? Because that way we make it a bit, like, we incentivize them to show up with the free t-shirt. That's one thing you could do. You can send them videos being like, there's probably some way with AI to figure this out these days, with like you're sending them the video and you say like their actual name in the video, but realistically it's just AI that's doing that, right? And then it looks like you're sending them a customized video before they show up to the school, right? You could call them more often before their trial class, right? And again, you could add a button on the landing page to be like, yo, like, are you actually going to make it to your appointment? And if you're booking them in over the phone, just be like, hey, like, can you actually make it to your scheduled trial class? Like, just double or triple checking with them that they're actually going to make it, right? And it's just one example here of if the show up rate is broken, of what you then need to do. And usually, once you implement all of these things or some of them, right, you will realize that the show up rate is going to be better. The problem is, though, if you're switching agencies like every 2 months or so, right, and you're always working with like a different one, you're basically always starting from scratch. Because the truth is, like, the agency that you worked with before, if they didn't track your data properly, or like everyone tracks data another way, if they even track data, right, it's not like they're just going to give the data to the next agency. So, which is why I think it's super important that if you ever work with any marketing agency, you need to like actually stick with them for a while. Actually, like, the longer the better. Now, obviously, this also implies that the agency needs to do a good job and the agency needs to track stuff, right? Because obviously, if the agency never gets back to you once you have like requests or whatsoever, right, and it's just doing a shitty job, then sure, you need to work with someone else, right? But if they're like somewhat decent or whatsoever, right, and you actually feel like, all right, they're being honest with me, I can see the data, I know what's going on, and they're following the process here with what I was just discussing, right, then realistically, if you know that they have like a good process, you should never switch. You should never go away from that agency, because if you do, then I don't know how to explain this. Then that basically means that Facebook ads just don't work in your area at all, which is super unlikely. And I know that this is gonna get a bit like controversial now, but I truly believe like what we have here is genuinely by a mile the best thing for any martial arts school owner, just because we track all of the data. We don't just add a bunch of friction in the beginning. We add friction based on what we need friction for. We try our best to set the right expectation of being like, look, the longer you commit to this, the more data we're going to have, the more optimized everything's going to be, right? Because, and I'm not trying to like sell you on this right now, I'm sure there are plenty of other agencies that follow that exact same procedure, right? Like, I don't even care right now if you're then deciding to work fast to work with any other agency. Like, that's not the point of this, but like the point of this video is just me telling you, like, look, realistically, this is like, at least what I've found so far, the only way for an agency to make your thing work, right? And it's not about, oh, it didn't work, we just need to switch to a paid trial offer now, or instead of a free trial offer, or we need to switch to another agency now, whatsoever. Oh, like Facebook ads don't work, we need to switch to Google ads now. No, like, you need to always look at it, and then there's usually like one specific thing broken. I can tell you the most common things I see when I speak with like martial arts school owners: their ads just suck, or they just don't run enough ads. What's like another big thing? Well, obviously the show up rate, or like a lot of agencies I think are pretty good at generating leads, but not at getting people to show up, right? Which, if I'm being honest, like, we're obviously also not perfect at this, right? Like, we also have a few clients where it's like, it's just harder to make it work than for others, right? But what we try to do is we look at the data and we adjust based on that, right? So for example, let's say you have a really high cost per lead, and you're just not getting enough leads through. Well, what would you do then? Well, these days the easiest things on Facebook and Instagram at least, test more creatives, test different angles, different hooks, yada yada yada, right? Say you get a bunch of people to show up at the gym that are broke, that can't afford the classes, and say you had like 30 people showing up at the gym, but 20 of them couldn't afford the classes. Well, what you then need to do is you need to kind of qualify people on price, or you need to look at the funnel and you need to maybe add friction to it so that you like filter those people out. What you might say though is, oh, but why wouldn't I work with an agency who already like only gets qualified people in the door and who already knows what to filter people on? Well, the truth about that is what I found is you can't just add unlimited friction in the beginning, because there are different friction points. There's, for example, leads that show up to the school that can't make the scheduled class times, pricing, location, probably like 10 other things that I'm not mentioning right now, right? And if you would just filter people out based on all of these 10 things at the beginning, meaning you had like, say, 10 different qualification questions to the Facebook ads, you might think, well, but wouldn't I then only get perfect leads? Yes and no. I mean, you would probably get way less leads, but the problem is we're then going to filter people out on things that aren't even a problem. Like, because for example, that schedule thing, that people can't make the scheduled class times. When we have a client, it's super rare that actually becomes an issue. And if it does, we're going to filter people out based on that. But why would we add so many friction steps in the beginning if, let's say, half of them aren't even an issue? And how do we find out what friction steps we need to add? Well, we need to get flow through the system and adjust based on the data we're getting. But I think it would be ridiculously stupid to add a lot of friction steps in the beginning already. Sure, like if you know your area is super broke and you've worked with like 10 agencies before, and all of them got broke leads into your gym and they track the data properly, and we have like some insight in that, it might make sense to add like 1 or 2 qualification questions or some qualification stuff already in the beginning, right? Or some friction in the beginning already. But most of the time, you first of all you don't want to add any friction. You want to get people through the system, and then over time, like if I give you a time frame here, usually what we see, usually what I say is once we had like 10, 20, 30 people coming to the gym, we can really like add friction to the system, because beforehand you can still do that, obviously based on like what's the show up rate, if the show up rate is an issue and so forth, right? But like usually you really wait, okay, let's get like 10, 20 people to show up at the gym, and then we add friction. Because the problem is also what a lot of people do is they just make decision based on a tiny amount of data, if that makes sense. Meaning they had like 3 people show up to the gym, all of them were broke, and they're like, oh, yep, we're only getting broke leads to the gym. Like, I can't do this. Whereas if you would just wait and you would get 10 people into the gym, and then let's say 4 out of them are broke, 3 signed up for a membership, and 2 are just have like other problems, right? Then you're still at a 30% close rate, which is not terrible. I mean, it could be better, obviously, right? But it's not horrible. So, yeah, I think, again, this doesn't just apply to us. I think it applies to any agency you're working with, right? You really need, you can't just be, oh, it's not working. Like there's usually a specific thing that's broken. And obviously there's also the thing with like, maybe the agency's broken and they just don't know what they're doing. And like, hands out, that's fine as well, I guess, right? Then it might make sense to work with another agency. But I think once you really find that agency that like really knows kind of what they're doing and they like kind of follow it doesn't need to be exactly what I just said, right? But they follow somewhat of the procedure that I just laid out here, and you should really just stick with them forever, I guess. Or stick with them for a year. And if like, because an agency also, like, for example, we just sometimes have clients where I'm like, look, we tried this for like a year now. It doesn't work. We tried all of the friction steps. We adjusted based on the data. It just doesn't work here right now. I don't know if your area is broken or whatever, but this just doesn't really work. And you also got to be honest as an agency and tell them like, look, might just be worth it to try it yourself. Maybe actually try another agency, but like really try to adjust everything here, but it just didn't really work. But usually you need to wait like a year or at least like 6 months to really make any of those decisions, if that makes sense, right? But anyways, I think it is pretty straightforward, what I'm saying here. I hope at least so. If you do want to work with us though, you can just click the link in the description. I don't care if you do it or not, but it's there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.